If you've ever gone down a lesser-known serial killer rabbit hole, you've probably heard about the Redhead Murders. It was a series of 6 to 11 murders across 6 different states during the 80s and early 1990s. The first suspected victim of the Redhead Murders was the Littleton or Wetzel County Jane Doe. Wetzel County, West Virginia. Yeah, this is going to be another Wetzel County Unsolved Mysteries video. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm the Best Virginian. I bring you West Virginia history and travel videos from right here in the mountain state of West Virginia. Occasionally I delve into the paranormal, and like today, we're going to take a look at some West Virginia true crime, specifically Wetzel County true crime, because these cases are always weird. Very weird, but very interesting. On February 13th, 1983, a couple of senior citizens were walking through the snow in the small town of Littleton, West Virginia. This is along Route 250, really one of the small little towns in between Morgantown and Moundsville, West Virginia, when they found what they thought was a mannequin laying in the snow. Upon further investigation, they realized it was actually a naked human. The body had been recently placed due to the fact that there had been a snowstorm recently, and while there was snow all around the body, there was actually very little on top of it. The victim was a woman who was believed to be between 30 and 45. She had auburn hair, was about 5'5" and 135 pounds. She had an abdominal scar that could have been from a cesarean and orange painted toenail. And for some reason, this is the detail that people just latched onto in super rural Wetzel County. She had orange toes. Like, growing up, orange toes was synonymous with the boogeyman. If you stayed out too late after dark, you're gonna end up like orange toes. If you don't tell your family where you're going when you go to run around in the woods, you're going to end up like orange toes. I have no idea why. This is the one detail everyone latched a hold of. Now, officials and law enforcement were perplexed by this case, to say the least. The only evidence at the scene were some truck tire marks and footprints that were left in the snow. Officials thought they had hit a break when they discovered that the victim was wearing a fairly new set of dentures. Officials immediately began searching the dental records of West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, this came back with 0 matches. And really, with no evidence and no leads, this is where the investigation started getting a little bit weird. They brought in a forensic hypnotist. Yes, a forensic hypnotist to talk to potential witnesses to try and get more information out of them. I don't know where you have to go to school to become a forensic hypnotist. Like, I don't know how long it takes to get that degree. Now, after being put under hypnosis, the witnesses told investigators they should be looking for a stocky male in his 40s that stood about 5'10". He may be driving a 2-tone Chevy pickup truck with a camper top. And that was a pretty good lead until you think about the fact that it was given to them by people under hypnosis. Unfortunately, it never led anywhere. It never brought in any suspects. All out of leads again, they took it a step farther and published post-mortem photographs of the Wetzel County Jane Doe in local newspapers. And this was actually a lot more successful. This caused tips to come in that the woman might have been a bartender or prostitute in either Wheeling, West Virginia or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Others, mostly people from the communities of Cameron, Hundred, and Littleton, tried blaming the Hare Krishnas who had recently moved into the area of New Veritable in West Virginia. And honestly, this was probably just finger pointing, since the Hare Krishnas were the new folks in town, and a lot of locals had a lot of issues and distrust with them as just being weird outsiders. And to be completely honest, a lot of West Virginians still kind of have that opinion, oddly enough. Years passed without any new leads or suspects, and in 1985, after an identified woman was found dead in Greene County, Tennessee, law enforcement from Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi requested the FBI help them with their similar Jane Doe cases. After days of meeting in this joint committee, they came up with a profile for a suspect they named the Redhead Murderer, and they concluded that all these cases were part of the Redhead Murders. So now that there was cooperation between state and local law enforcement, and even the FBI was working on this case, they were going to catch this individual, right? Not exactly, because this profile was absolutely riddled with holes. The profile was that someone was murdering women and dumping them along major U.S. highways. The issue was Route 250 in West Virginia is not a major highway. Towns like Hundred, Littleton, Cameron, not bustling metropolises. Some of the victims were found fully clothed, others were found not. All the victims were supposed to have had red hair, but at least two of them had basically fully skeletalized, so there was no way of figuring out what color their hair was. They basically just took a bunch of cases that they had no leads on and kind of just threw them together. And despite all the inconsistencies in between the individual cases, officials went with this profile for years. And I can kind of understand why. Forensic analysis and forensic psychology were really emerging sciences at the time. I think they just stuck a little bit too much faith into those because they wanted to catch the next Bundy, the next Berkowitz, the next Kemper. And unfortunately, they took a bunch of individual cases and tried forcing them to be related to each other when they ultimately probably weren't. Now, eventually, the state had to do something with the Wetzel County Jane Doe. They had basically gotten all the evidence from the body that they could. It was time for them to basically cremate and get rid of it. But that's when a family in the nearby community of Payton City swooped in and adopted the Wetzel County Jane Doe. The family adopted her, named her Judy, and actually gave her a proper funeral and burial. And today you can visit the grave of Judy at the Payton Memorial Gardens in Payton City, West Virginia. Just be aware, before you go and spend like 4 hours walking around the cemetery, it is a flat marker cemetery. So that's where I'm going to leave this off for today. This is still considered an active investigation in Wetzel County, West Virginia. Now, over the years, they slowly started whittling away some of the individuals that were on the list of suspected redhead murder victims, and that's why the list went from 11 down to 6. A lot of those victims that they have taken off the list is because they were identified and then they were able to connect them to their murderers. And that's really where this idea of one individual perpetrating all these murders really started falling apart. But it just shows that these cases can still be solved. But until next time, don't forget to stay wild, stay wonderful, and I will talk to you later.